Good morning and namaste. So, what really happened in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah? So, we'll just discuss this briefly, and like always, you can go ahead and do further research if this is a topic that interests you. So, Sodom and Gomorrah were essentially two cities that are mentioned in the Bible, mentioned in different places, mostly in Genesis. Two cities that were completely wiped out by God due to the immorality of the people living there. So essentially, if we go through Genesis and we read a little bit about it, so if we go into Genesis, chapter 19, specifically chapters 1 through 30, it'll talk about, the two angels arriving, and basically they're showing up at this guy's house, and his name is Lot. And basically they show up at his door and they say, hey, we're going to destroy the city because God's pretty mad at everybody because everybody in this city is immoral. They're, not following the commandments of the Lord. And so we have to destroy the city. So we're showing up at your house to tell you that you need to get out. And basically this guy called Lot, he's in his house with his family and his, two daughters basically and his wife. And he invites these guests in. And basically what happens is now he has like this angry mob outside of his house. And Lot is basically saying, look, you can't have my guests, but you can have my two daughters, which are virgins. You can do anything with them, but you can't have these men. So as we go through the story, it essentially, that's the gist of it, is, Lot has got to get out with his family or he's going to be all burned, basically. And we see here Genesis 19:24, then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. So without going into too much detail, first off, let's just ask some questions. Who exactly is Lot? Why is he the only person being saved? He was supposedly favored by God. And let's just ask some questions. Well, what if Lot was, like the head of a military office? Or he had some important position with a secret service of some type? And what if these angels, these angelic messengers, were not really angels, like in the sense that we think of them, but simply other military personnel that were coming to get one of their coworkers essentially out of harm's way because they had orders from their chain of command that, in fact, the city was going to be destroyed. In fact, that would almost seem to make more sense, especially as we go farther down and ask more questions. If Lot was exceptionally moral and was like being faithful to God, the God that we think of, then why is he giving away his two daughters to an angry mob of people? That doesn't make sense either. Surely you would think that somebody that's in line with God, the creator of the universe, would have some other tactic instead of, hey, I'm just going to throw out my two daughters to this angry mob so I can keep my guests. So just, asking a couple questions and, just this is why we need to ask questions on anything. We need to kind of like, at this point in the history of the human race, we kind of need to pick apart everything because there's so much obscurity. There's so much hidden from us right now. And we really need to kind of take a fine-tooth comb and kind of sort through, what's actually the truth and what's not. And we have to really start to not believe anything. We can't hold on to beliefs any longer. And, I'm not like ripping on like people that believe the Bible or anything. I'm just saying that sometimes, we've been like so programmed to believe in a certain way, and it's really not benefiting us anymore. So we kind of need to start to pick through these things and ask questions and start to see if it even makes sense. Because the history that we've been told is kind of not the truth, essentially. And we have to continue to dig to find out what it is. So, that being said, let's propose looking at this story from a different angle. So now Lot is the head of some military organization or military branch. 2 messengers arrive. They are also part of the military. They're like, hey, our chain of command said we have to destroy the city. You need to get out. Come with us. So, and I say this because if we look at Genesis 19:13, it says, because we are going to destroy the place, the outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. Another question, if God is so powerful, why can't he just whip up his own meteor storm? Why can't he just whip up another flood? Why can't he just like whip up an earthquake and just like, collapse the city if all of these people are immoral? He could do anything. If he is the breath of life, he could just simply extinguish the breath at any given time. So why does he need to send people to do his work for him? If you're God, you can just like think of something and it happens. You can like create universes. So why is he even sending messengers? These are the questions I'm asking. Obviously, you can ask your own questions. So that being said, now Lot is the head of a military, and the army has moved in, and they're basically going to destroy the city with nuclear weapons. If we go back about 5,000 years ago to about 3000 BC, we have the Mahabharata, which is the Great India, essentially. And you can read like a shortened version here, the Mahabharata. This is only like a couple hundred pages. It's like really super easy. You can read it in a day. Or you can actually go through and read, the entire book, which is the longest book in like human history. But we know that in the Mahabharata, they speak of weapons that, hint at nuclear weapons. The Astras is what they call these weapons. And there was one specifically, the Brahmastra. And I can see here the Brahmastra, at least on this page, we can see that Drona heard it as he was about to discharge the deadliest of the Astras in his power, the Brahmastra, which would have wiped out all the Pandavas and their armies in a second. So we basically can see that their weapons are so strong that they can just wipe out anything. And these are weapons that they're talking about. They're not talking about meteors falling down to the earth. They're not talking about natural, acts of God, natural events that could happen due to nature. They're talking about specific weapons. And this was about 3100 BC is when this great war took place. So why is it not plausible to think that in the time of the Bible, which was 2,000 years ago, that the same thing could happen? How do we know that, whatever group of people, ancient civilization or alien race, or even maybe a human race that is just, simply just slightly more advanced than us, that they have knowledge to build these weapons like we have knowledge today? And that's exactly what they did, and they made a great war. So why is it not plausible to think that the same thing could have happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, that essentially they were wiped out by nuclear war? And we can see here, even, in this website, it says basically, there was some kind of catastrophe about 3,700 years ago, brought to a sudden end. Like, so strong was the extreme heat, like 120 small settlements in the region showed signs of extreme collapse inducing heat and wind. Pottery that was exposed to heat so intense it melted into glass. So this is just kind of like one example, like, what could do this? We know the effects of radiation, as we can see here, effects of nuclear war. And I have this specifically on what it does to the human body, and I will leave this link below.
The range and penetration of nuclear radiations varies similarly in tissue. Alpha particles are absorbed by the outer layers of the skin. Beta particles penetrate through the skin into the subcutaneous layers. Neutrons are very highly penetrating in tissue, as are gamma rays. Although nuclear radiations vary in penetration, they all have the same destructive effect on tissue cells. In general, radiation causes ionization in the component atoms of cells, altering their chemical nature and impairing or destroying their normal functions. Alpha particles cause intense ionization, but are chiefly absorbed by the dead outer layers of the skin and do little damage to the living tissue beneath. Beta particles penetrate deeper but cause less ionization. They may result in serious damage to the skin and superficial tissues. Neither alpha nor beta rays causes serious damage to deep tissues unless the source of the rays is inside the body. Neutrons travel an erratic course and lose their energy after colliding with several other atoms. Under the impact of the neutrons, light hydrogen atoms in the tissue fly off at high velocities, producing ionization in neighboring cells. On striking tissue, gamma rays eject beta particles from atoms within the cells. The beta particles, in turn, cause ionization in the local tissue. With gamma rays of low energy, the most intense ionization of tissue cells is produced in the superficial layers. With gamma radiation of higher energy, the peak of ionization is in the deeper tissues, and effective ionization occurs throughout the entire body. With whole body radiation, ionization causes loss of function of the more sensitive tissues and organs. The degree of loss depends upon the dosage. If the exposure is both general and severe, death results. Fission.
And that this is what nuclear weapons does, is they basically melt pottery, they melt things, they burn everything. If you look, from like World War II, what happened in Hiroshima, basically like it was, wiped out and things were, completely devastated, and the effects of radiation are still there. We talk about that this God basically may not have been a God. How do we see like Hollywood, or how do we see politicians? Many people think of these people almost as gods, godlike. So why is it not, why does it not make sense to think that possibly these gods of the past, of biblical times, was not the God that we're thinking of, but essentially a captain of the army or of some military department. And basically they were, using nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles, even laser technology, quite possibly to destroy the people of those places, whether they were at war with us or whether it was a war between them and another group, possibly another alien race, and we were just in the middle of it, whatever it could be. We know that, for example, even they talk about the remnants of the Sodom and Gomorrah, of these ancient cities, and they've kind of guesstimated it as to be about the location of the Dead Sea. Now, if we know, like the Arabs, they don't go, for tourism to the Dead Sea. Actually, what they do say about the Dead Sea is it is so, there are many, according to Arab tradition, there are many poisonous gases evaporating from that lake that are so hazardous birds cannot fly over it. So that's kind of another thing, like besides the fact that there's like whirlpools and there's possibility of drowning, the Dead Sea really isn't a tourism place. It's only like a Western thing because there's like 5-star hotels and people are like, oh, this is like trendy. And, humans follow trend. And that's how people make money, is because people follow trends. But essentially, I just wanted to put this out there today, like Sodom and Gomorrah, what exactly happened? Could it be plausible that there was a nuclear war? Who is the God that we are essentially talking about? Is it essentially a head of some military organization or an ancient race, an alien race? Who is Lot? Was he just, also like the boss of some military department? And, why wouldn't it be strange to think, in some of these places, there's still radiation coming off of some of these places in the deserts. And if it had already happened once, 5,000 years ago, with technology enough to destroy entire cities, such as this Brahmastra, you can also read about this in the Puranas, these great weapons, these astras. Why would it not be wrong to think, or, why would it not be plausible to think that this was just another war being fought from different races, possibly alien races, that are just more advanced than we are now? Essentially, we are almost at that point of advancement that it would be possible, because we do have these kind of weapons to destroy entire cities. And we're essentially in the midst of race wars for years. You're seeing things every day about, this race against this race, so sure, it could definitely be happening. If the people that had the technology to fight these wars keep coming back to fight these wars, they'll continue to use that type of technology, won't they? So, leaving you with that today. Let me know thoughts, comments, suggestions. Hit subscribe to subscribe. And namaste.